Clara trudged down the aisle of the half-empty airplane, her bag sagging against her shoulder, every step heavier than the last. Her daughter, Lila, had fallen ill overnight, feverish and weak, and Clara had spent the entire morning juggling phone calls to the pediatrician, rushing to pack essentials, and whispering prayers she wasn't sure anyone would hear. She barely noticed the murmurs of other passengers or the dull hum of the engines as she sank into the window seat beside a man whose presence radiated quiet authority. Nathaniel Vale adjusted his tie and glanced at her briefly, a flicker of curiosity in his dark eyes, though he quickly returned to gazing out the window, pretending to ignore the weight of the world pressing against him in every careful movement. Clara's exhaustion caught up to her faster than she expected. Minutes into the flight, her eyelids grew impossibly heavy. She tried to keep herself awake, muttering under her breath about Lila needing her, but the gentle sway of the plane and the rhythm of the engine worked like a lullaby. Without realizing it, her head leaned onto Nathaniel's shoulder. The first contact startled him, subtle yet undeniable. The warmth of her presence, the faint scent of lavender and soap, the soft exhale of someone too tired to fight the day. He froze, a rare and strange stillness overtaking him. Clara shifted slightly, murmuring an apologetic, half asleep, "I'm so sorry," but there was no real urgency in her voice. She was too drained to fully register the social boundaries she had just crossed. Nathaniel's initial reaction was restraint, a polite clearing of his throat, yet as the minutes passed, he found himself still. There was something about her, the way exhaustion had softened the edges of her composed demeanor, the fragility that didn't scream for attention, but simply existed, something profoundly human he hadn't allowed himself to notice in years. He didn't move her, he didn't ask her to readjust. Instead, he felt a surprising sense of protection settle over him, a desire to quietly shoulder her burden without words. Clara's quiet trust, unspoken and uncalculated, tugged at the guarded parts of him he had carefully hidden behind wealth, power, and notoriety. Half an hour into the flight, the stewardess moved past, checking on passengers. Clara stirred slightly, mumbling Lila's name, and Nathaniel's curiosity shifted into tangible concern. He leaned closer, keeping his voice low, careful not to wake her fully. "Your daughter, is she unwell?" he asked softly, his tone gentle but unmistakably aware of the panic she tried to contain. Clara's eyes fluttered open, confusion and embarrassment colliding in a sleepy gaze. She hadn't expected a stranger to care, let alone a stranger who looked like he could command entire corporations with a single word. "Yes, she's very sick," Clara whispered, her voice trembling as if admitting it might make it real. Nathaniel nodded slowly, digesting the information with a careful patience that was unfamiliar to her. The flight continued, clouds shifting outside, and Clara drifted back into a half-sleep, this time with Nathaniel's hand subtly brushing against hers on the armrest in a comforting, almost protective gesture. She didn't wake, and he didn't pull away. His mind wandered, unaccustomed to personal attachment, wondering about the life of a woman so different from the ones who typically filled the rooms of the people he knew. Clara was real, unguarded, carrying the weight of a world he had long since avoided. The plane lurched slightly, the overhead lights dimmed, and Nathaniel found himself almost speaking aloud, though the words never left his lips. "I want to help." It was impulsive, unfiltered, like nothing he had allowed himself in decades. By the time the captain's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing unexpected turbulence and a minor reroute for medical necessity, Nathaniel had made a decision. He leaned toward Clara, whose eyes opened fully this time, confusion still in her gaze but registering the unusual seriousness in his. "Your daughter," he said, his voice firm yet not harsh. "She needs care immediately. We'll be landing at the nearest airport with a hospital ready. You don't have to worry alone." Clara blinked, stunned. The moment stretched, the world narrowing to this stranger who somehow seemed more concerned about her child than she could have imagined possible. Her heart thumped, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and something unidentifiable, something warm and fluttering she didn't yet name. When the plane descended, the cabin staff and paramedics moved with efficiency, but Clara stayed close to Nathaniel, half in awe of the presence he brought, not loud or commanding, but quiet, deliberate, and steady. She noticed little things, the way he adjusted the seatbelt for her daughter's comfort in his mind, even though Lila wasn't there yet. The tilt of his head as he observed the paramedics. The faint crease in his forehead showing concern. Something utterly foreign to the polished image of him she would have never guessed if not for his calm, unobtrusive heroism. Nathaniel did not rush her, nor did he offer empty reassurances. He walked beside her, silent but supportive, until Clara felt safe enough to speak. I don't know how to thank you, she admitted, the words fragile, like they might shatter if she breathed too loudly. He gave a small, near-invisible smile, the kind that hinted at depths of experience, of pain, of restraint. There's no need, he said quietly, almost to himself. Let's focus on Lila. That singular focus, a priority unburdened by social expectations, left an impression on Clara that she would carry long after the ride to the hospital ended. The ambulance ride was brief, but filled with unspoken understanding. Clara noticed how Nathaniel seemed aware of every detail. The lane changes, the quickest route, how to communicate with emergency staff without asserting himself too forcefully, and yet with undeniable authority. She wondered why someone so capable, so commanding, would care about her and her daughter, a pair of strangers barely clinging to composure amid chaos. And Nathaniel, for the first time in years, allowed himself to notice the humanity in someone else without suspicion, without calculation, and with an openness that startled him. By the time Lila was wheeled into the emergency room, stabilized, and under attentive care, Clara was physically drained but emotionally buoyed. Nathaniel stayed close, quietly handling all interactions with medical staff, ensuring every detail of her daughter's care was seamless. Clara's gratitude went beyond words. It lingered in the subtle gestures, in the way he seemed to anticipate her needs without a single directive, in the protective stance he naturally adopted without fanfare. When the night finally settled and Clara sat by Lila's bedside, Nathaniel remained, a quiet shadow of assurance, a reminder that even in the most unexpected encounters, trust and compassion could appear, uninvited, but perfectly timed. The flight, which began as an ordinary, nerve-wracking journey, had shifted everything for Clara. A single moment her head on his shoulder had unknowingly bridged two worlds. Her life of quiet struggle and Nathaniel's solitary, meticulously controlled existence. And as she watched him from across the room, seeing him not as the public figure the media might paint, but as a man capable of empathy and selfless action, something new stirred in her, a fragile, growing sense of hope, that maybe the world wasn't as isolating as she had feared. She had no idea how deeply this chance encounter would change everything, nor how quickly her heart would follow a rhythm she hadn't realized was waiting to be discovered. Clara spent the next few days in a daze, watching Lila's small chest rise and fall under the soft hospital lights, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and relief she hadn't known she could survive. Nathaniel had insisted on covering every expense, arranging for specialists, and ensuring the apartment she lived in was upgraded for her comfort, but he did so with an understated kindness that left her both grateful and uneasy. She wasn't used to strangers or anyone intervening so decisively in her life, and yet, she found herself watching him with a quiet curiosity, noticing the way his hand lingered on paperwork a moment too long, or how his gaze softened when he looked at Lila. There was no arrogance, no pretense, just a careful, patient attentiveness that slowly began to chip away at the walls Clara had built around herself. Nathaniel didn't intrude, but he didn't distance himself either. He offered meals at odd hours, quietly straightened the blankets around Lila, and checked vitals when Clara's fatigue threatened to overwhelm her. His presence was consistent, unobtrusive, yet undeniably grounding. "You need rest, Clara," he said one evening, his voice low and steady as he guided her to a chair by the window. The city lights outside painted streaks across the room, reflections in her tired eyes. She shook her head, smiling weakly. "I can't. Not when she's still so fragile." He sat beside her, allowing silence to stretch comfortably between them, no expectation, just shared understanding. Over time, the interactions grew deeper. Nathaniel began to reveal fragments of himself, stories of a childhood shadowed by absence, a youth spent learning to navigate loneliness, and the decisions that had built the life of solitude he carried like armor. Clara listened, sometimes with tears, sometimes with quiet laughter, as he spoke of small regrets and fleeting joys, of mistakes and victories no one had witnessed. She felt a kinship with him, recognizing the echoes of struggle in her own life. Nights spent worrying over bills, the sleepless hours caring for Lila when illness struck without warning, the constant balancing act between survival and hope. Nathaniel's guarded nature became a challenge she approached with patience, understanding that trust was not freely given but cultivated. Nathaniel, in turn, found himself astonished by Clara's strength, her unwavering devotion to Lila, and the calm determination that anchored her even in the most chaotic moments. He watched how she navigated the world without complaint, how she found humor in small absurdities, a joke about neighbors' noisy cats at 2 in the morning or a fleeting quip about the hospital cafeteria's mystery meat, and realized that her laughter was a bridge he hadn't known he needed. The walls he had built to keep others at a distance began to crumble under the weight of genuine care and quiet affection, and he found himself seeking opportunities to be near her, to share in the simple, unremarkable moments that somehow felt profound. One afternoon, as Lila napped, Clara and Nathaniel walked through a nearby park, the city buzzing faintly beyond the canopy of trees. She spoke of dreams she had once held, completing her nursing specialization, volunteering for international aid, but had shelved in the endless struggle to provide for Lila. Nathaniel listened intently, offering gentle encouragement, subtly arranging support to make her ambitions achievable. "You've got this," he said quietly, the words carrying weight far beyond their simplicity. Clara smiled, feeling both embarrassment and warmth, as if the acknowledgement of her worth were something she hadn't fully internalized until this moment. "It's okay to feel tired, to doubt yourself," he added, a rare vulnerability threading his voice. "But you're stronger than you realize." Their connection deepened in the quietest ways, shared meals, whispered conversations during late-night vigils at the hospital, the small gestures of care that spoke louder than any declaration of intent. Nathaniel would arrive with freshly baked bread or rare flowers, things Clara had never indulged in herself, and she would protest gently, only to relent when she saw the earnestness in his expression. Lila began to respond to him as well, a shy smile breaking across her pale face, reaching for his hand when he entered the room, sensing the safe presence he offered. It was in these small, unspoken exchanges that love began to root itself, not in grand declarations but in consistency, attentiveness, and the willingness to be fully present. At night, when the apartment quieted and Lila slept, Nathaniel would sit beside Clara, their shoulders brushing, hands occasionally finding each other in tentative, reassuring contact. Clara's mind was a whirlwind of emotion, gratitude, admiration, a delicate, burgeoning affection, but she guarded it, uncertain how to reconcile her feelings with the reality of his wealth and status. Nathaniel, conversely, was unaccustomed to the vulnerability she inspired, the openness she demanded without asking, and he found himself drawn inexorably toward her warmth, her humanity, the simple authenticity that had been absent from his carefully curated life. Weeks passed, and Lila's health stabilized. The apartment, once a temporary refuge, became a space filled with quiet laughter, homework sessions, and small celebrations of recovery milestones. Nathaniel's gestures became routine, yet never banal. He learned her favorite teas, kept spare blankets by the sofa for napping, and memorized Lila's bedtime stories so he could join in when Clara needed a brief reprieve. Clara, once hesitant to allow anyone close, began to appreciate his steady presence, noticing the rare moments he allowed himself to relax, the faint smile that betrayed how much he had grown attached to them both. Trust was no longer tentative. It was earned, nurtured, and slowly transformed into something undeniably profound. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, Clara found herself leaning against Nathaniel's shoulder, mirroring the position she had assumed weeks ago on that fateful flight. Only now, she was awake, aware, and willingly sharing the closeness she had once taken for granted. Nathaniel's arm wrapped gently around her, a protective, comforting embrace, and neither spoke immediately, content to allow the moment to stretch, to breathe, to signify a bond that had grown stronger through trials, care, and mutual understanding. Their hearts beat in quiet synchronization, not as a declaration but as a recognition that life, no matter how chaotic or fragile, had brought them together for reasons neither had yet fully understood. As Lila played with her dolls in the corner, chattering happily about the school projects she would tackle once fully recovered, Clara and Nathaniel shared a soft, knowing glance. It was unspoken but unmistakable. They were no longer strangers, no longer two isolated individuals navigating parallel struggles. They had begun to build a life together, one careful step at a time, grounded in trust, empathy, and the gentle unfolding of love that required no grand gestures, just presence, patience, and unwavering care. For Clara, Nathaniel was becoming a constant she could rely on. For Nathaniel, Clara and Lila were the anchors he had never known he needed. And in the quiet of that apartment, under the amber glow of a setting sun, the first true foundations of a family and a love neither had anticipated were laid. By the time Lila was fully recovered, the rhythm of their lives had changed. Clara's apartment, once modest and quiet, now felt alive with laughter, warmth, and a sense of safety she hadn't known in years. Nathaniel was no longer a distant figure moving through their lives like a careful shadow. He had become an inseparable presence. He handled the world outside with the precision and authority he had always been known for. But within these walls, he was different, relaxed, affectionate, and remarkably open. Clara watched him adjust the blinds to catch the morning sun, pour Lila cereal just the way she liked it, and read her bedtime stories with unexpected humor and flair, and she realized that the man she had first met on a flight had become an integral part of her heart and home. Their bond deepened as Nathaniel began to share his world more openly, inviting Clara to quiet moments and spaces she never imagined she would enter. The penthouse above the city, usually a symbol of solitude and control, became a place of soft laughter, family dinners, and gentle teasing over minor mishaps like when Lila attempted to bake cookies at midnight and left a trail of flour across the kitchen floor. Clara laughed, wiping her hands on a towel, while Nathaniel joined her with an affectionate shake of his head. "You've got this," he said, teasingly echoing the words he had used when she doubted herself weeks earlier, a gentle reminder of the patience, trust, and love that had brought them together. Lila giggled, seeing the joy reflected in both their faces, feeling a family forming in real time, anchored by care, consistency, and unspoken devotion. Nathaniel faced the public scrutiny of his wealth and status head-on, showing Clara that love could coexist with attention and expectation. He appeared beside her in moments where media speculation would have once intimidated or distanced him, holding her hand firmly, his presence a shield and reassurance. Clara, initially overwhelmed by the attention, gradually realized that Nathaniel's actions were a reflection of genuine partnership, not mere public display. She learned to navigate the spotlight with him, to find strength in her own voice, and to embrace the role of mother and partner with newfound confidence. Together, they created a life that balanced her values and his world, bridging the gap between their past struggles and the life they were determined to build. The culmination of their relationship was not sudden but inevitable, shaped by countless shared experiences, quiet gestures, and the trust that had taken root in the most unexpected of circumstances. One evening, on the rooftop of Nathaniel's penthouse, the city sprawling beneath them, he knelt with a simple velvet box in hand. Clara's breath caught, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and disbelief. "Clara," he said, voice steady but tender, "you and Lila have changed my life in ways I never imagined possible. Will you marry me?" Tears brimmed in her eyes, a mixture of relief, joy, and love, as she nodded emphatically. Lila jumped up and down beside her, squealing in delight, her little hands clasped over her mouth in happiness. The proposal was intimate, private, and perfect, emblematic of their journey, unassuming, heartfelt, and rooted in the reality they had built together. The wedding, small and intimate, reflected their bond rather than grandeur. Close friends, family, and a few carefully chosen colleagues witnessed the ceremony on a terrace overlooking the city, bathed in warm afternoon light. Clara walked slowly toward Nathaniel, hand in hand with Lila, the world fading until only the three of them existed in that space. The vows were simple, honest, and moving, promising patience, presence, and unwavering support. When Nathaniel slipped the ring onto Clara's finger, it felt less like a symbol of status or wealth and more like a declaration that love, care, and vulnerability could be cultivated, nurtured, and celebrated despite any obstacles. They laughed, cried, and embraced, the foundation of their family built from chance, courage, and commitment solidified in that perfect moment. Months later, as they boarded a flight to a remote island for a quiet vacation, Clara pressed her hand against her growing belly, a soft smile on her lips. She had just learned she was pregnant with twins, and Nathaniel held her close, whispering reassurances and plans for a future that stretched F.Y. of names, nursery arrangements, and the balance of work and family, their conversation punctuated by laughter and gentle teasing. Nathaniel, once a man defined by solitude, realized that his greatest legacy was not the empire he had built, but the love and family he now embraced. Clara, too, felt the joy of a life transformed, her heart swelling with hope, purpose, and gratitude. The island rose to meet them in a warm, golden light, a fresh beginning unencumbered by the past, a space where love and family could thrive fully. A year later, Clara launched the Heartbridge Foundation, inspired by her journey and the help Nathaniel had provided. The initiative aimed to support single mothers and children in healthcare, blending her compassion with Nathaniel's resources. Nathaniel stepped fully into this world, speaking at events, offering mentorship, and showcasing the strength of their partnership. Together, they had become more than a couple. They were a force for good, balancing love, empathy, and responsibility. Their story, once sparked by a chance encounter on an airplane, had transformed into a lasting bond of mutual respect, trust, and devotion, illustrating that true wealth lies not in money or notoriety, but in love, family, and shared purpose. Their love, born from unexpected circumstances, had transcended wealth and status, showing that connection, patience, and courage could overcome isolation, fear, and uncertainty. Every glance, every gesture, every shared smile became a testament to the power of human connection, the beauty of vulnerability, and the enduring strength of family forged through compassion. Clara and Nathaniel, once strangers brought together by chance, now navigated life side by side, embracing challenges, celebrating triumphs, and looking forward to a future filled with possibility, purpose, and the quiet, unwavering certainty of love. Moral lesson: love often arrives when least expected, quietly bridging worlds that seemed far apart. Patience, trust, and vulnerability transform chance encounters into lasting bonds. In embracing one another's struggles, supporting dreams, and sharing daily joys, a foundation for enduring connection emerges. Wealth or status cannot substitute empathy, presence, or care. These are the true measures of a meaningful life. Even in hardship, small acts of kindness ripple into profound transformations, teaching that hearts open to love can create family, purpose, and hope. Cherish vulnerability, nurture relationships, and let compassion guide your journey. Love and trust grow with courage and care. Like the video, subscribe for more stories, share with friends, and comment your thoughts on this journey of love and transformation.